With Trey Kaufman-Renn out against Evansville, Jack Benner, the redshirt freshman, really stepped up. Can he do it again tomorrow against Oakland?
You are Locked On Boilermakers, your daily podcast on the Purdue Boilermakers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Boilermakers here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I am your host. I am Nick Arvin, and we have a Thursday, very fun episode of Locked On Boilermakers coming your way today. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. I really appreciate you guys joining us here on this episode of Locked On Boilermakers on this Thursday, beautiful Thursday. We're going to be talking about Jack Benner, how he stepped up against Evansville. Will he continue to do that against Oakland tomorrow? What can Jack Benner be for this team this year? We'll talk more about Oakland, what they bring into Mackey tomorrow night, what Purdue will have to do to match up against them and to start out 2-0 on the season. Then we're going to end off today's episode talking about predictions for that game. What's my final score? What do I expect to happen? And what are the expectations for Purdue coming out Friday night? Hopefully it's a 2-0 record, but we'll talk all about that. But with that being said, I want to go ahead and jump right into what the title of this episode is about. And I think that we really need to talk about this guy because Tuesday night against Evansville, the home opener, regular season opener, there was a lot of excitement surrounding that game, the start of this season. And for Purdue, the first big kick really came about 2 hours before game time, where it was announced that TKR would be held out. Now, this isn't a big injury to TKR. It is a day-to-day thing, just precautionary, so not too much to worry about in the All-American hopeful in terms of TK, because this team is going to be at its best when TKR is playing. There's no doubt about that. However, the fact that Jack Benner was announced as the starter with TK out, that kind of surprised me a little bit because this is a guy that redshirted last year. Matt Painter really liked what he saw out of Jack Benner this offseason, has been incredibly high on this guy and said last year, Jack Benner is too talented not to redshirt. And I think we may be in a similar situation with Antoine West, but that's a whole episode for another day. But anyways, Jack Benner, very talented, and anyone could tell that. In terms of physical attributes, in terms of his potential, could certainly shoot the three ball coming into Purdue. But defensively, that was something that he really worked on this offseason in terms of developing, in terms of getting better, guarding up against Trey Kaufman-Renn, who is a very big power forward, who is offensive dominating. So that's what Jack Benner needed to see this offseason in order to develop as a defender. And back to my point, going into Evansville, I was a little bit surprised when Jack Benner was announced the starter alongside CJ Cox, Fletcher Loyer, and Braden Smith. And the reason for that is because Evansville, they came into Mackey a very lengthy team. For a mid-major, Evansville is one of the bigger teams that you're going to see, and they're not the best mid-major by any stretch of the imagination, but visibly, whenever you saw those two starting lineups out there, you could tell that Evansville, believe it or not, they were a little bit taller, a little bit longer than Purdue. And that was a surprise to me, especially with Jack Benner at 6'6", not your typical power forward, but still starting at that position. And it would have been easy for Jack Benner to be outmatched by Evansville. It would be easy for him to not really show up in his first start as a Boilermaker. But when I tell you Jack Benner showed up and he stepped up in a big way in Trey Kaufman-Renn's absence, and it really sets up Purdue Boilermakers fans realizing that we may have Jack Benner for another 4 years. That redshirt was huge because you have a guy in Benner who he can be a six-man this year. He can be extremely successful, and he showed that against Evansville because Jack Benner had a big night, stepping up in 22 minutes with TKR absent with 11 points. He had 6 rebounds, which were huge, 2 assists, was very efficient, shooting 4 for 7, 3 for 6 from three. Jack Benner was all over the place in that one. And I think that we're going to see a lot more of him throughout this season. And I expect him to step up once again against Oakland. We don't yet know whether Trey Kaufman-Renn will be healthy for that one or not. We know that he will likely be playing against Alabama next weekend. Whether he plays against Oakland, we'll find that out tomorrow. That's really going to be a game time decision, and that's going to be up to Coach Matt Painter. But whether Jack Benner starts, whether he plays off the bench, I feel like we can kind of expect for him to be a spark, because that's exactly what he was in his first start as a Boilermaker. He was a spark. He shot 50% from three. When that ball came out of his hand, he had a couple of those on the bottom wing where nothing but net, that little step back. It looks so good. Jack Benner, he looked like a guy who was ready to play. And the size mismatch, it really didn't matter, because Benner, he was able to space out the floor and really get it going from three. He got a couple inside that was really successful. There was one where he got open under the rim and finished off the layup. But ultimately, I came out of this game, and there was a lot to talk about in terms of takeaways from Evansville. Fletcher Loyer shooting the ball at an elite clip, 30 points, his career high. Braden Smith had 11 assists. But I feel like we kind of expected for those guys to have big nights. We expect for those guys to have big seasons. But when we talk about someone with a question mark that really performed, I think the guy that you got to look at is Jack Benner. And we still are very early. It's a small sample size, but I think that Benner impressed at a very high level, especially when you factor in he wasn't just scoring. He did score efficiently, but also got those rebounds, also had a couple big assists. Jack Benner is a type of guy where he can really be that utility piece for you going this year, where he is that depth guy. No matter where you need to plug him, he was a guard coming out of high school, and we saw him start at the power forward position against Evansville. I think that Jack Benner is a guy that can play the 1 through 4 spots, and you don't really find any lack of production at any of those positions. I really think that Benner is a multi-tool that can be successful no matter where you put him, and that's going to be so huge for Purdue, because right now is probably the healthiest part of the season for Purdue. We've been very blessed to not have many injuries, if at all. I know TKR, but that is a day-to-day thing. Nothing too serious. But as the season goes on, everyone knows the college basketball season, it's long. The tournament is long. Things happen. Guys get hurt. And when you have a guy like Jack Benner who can plug in anywhere, who can really fill in no matter who's hurt, that gives you so much versatility that it's hard to beat. It's hard to beat a team when they have so many guys that can fill in, so many guys that can fill in and really give you plus minutes. And that's exactly what Jack Benner provided in this game. Only had 2 fouls, which was really big. When you talk about Purdue, they need to stay out of foul trouble this year. I just can't speak highly enough. He didn't get to the free throw line, so that's going to be something whether Benner really develops, getting to the hoop, getting to the rim, and getting to that charity stripe. We'll have to see about that. But in terms of what we saw from night one, start number 1 from Jack Benner, I was very impressed. And I think that Purdue might have a redshirt freshman phenom on their hands. We know what they got in Omer Meyer. He's certainly still going to get comfortable, but I think in terms of all the freshmen on this team, Antoine West, he didn't get in, Benner, and Meyer, I think that Benner is the most ready freshman out of all of those guys right now. I think he felt the most comfortable. I think he looked the most comfortable, and I think that he's going to continue to have more minutes because he has that level of comfort in Matt Painter's offense. And whether that comes from the red shirt, whether that's just who Jack Benner is, we don't know. But what we do know is that Jack Benner stepped in against Evansville. He really showed up on a night where you were shorthanded without TKR. And going on to the rest of this year, going into tomorrow against Oakland, you have faith that Jack Benner is going to be able to provide for you, whether you got all your guys or whether you don't. Jack Benner is going to be very successful this year for Purdue. And with 4 years of eligibility left, Big Ten teams need to watch out because Jack Benner is here. He has arrived, and he's going to be a really great player for Purdue this year. We'll talk about Oakland. They're coming into Mackey Arena tomorrow night. What do they have to bring? Greg Kampe's team always seems to be fairly good. We'll talk about them here next. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Well, Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. And the Part Finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Purdue comes off a win 2 days ago, but the season is here. We are right in the stretch, and there is no rest in college basketball as tomorrow Oakland comes to visit Mackey Arena, and Purdue will take them on the second game of the year, second home game. And Purdue, they're going to try to advance to 2-0 on the season. We'll be back here tomorrow night to break down that game, react to that one. But I want to go ahead and break this team down. Who's coming to visit Mackey Arena? Because like I said, these games are so close together, not enough episodes in the week to really talk too in depth about this one. So today is the day we're talking about this Oakland basketball team. And when you talk to Oakland, you have to talk Greg Kampe because he's been their head coach and he's been there forever. He has really created the identity for Oakland, these Grizzly teams that have been there. Notably, they beat Kentucky in the big dance a couple years back. This has been a solid team throughout Greg Kampe's tenure for the Grizzlies. They've always been solid in the Horizon League, but against Purdue, and especially this year, they have this really crazy schedule to start out the year. They faced off against Michigan opening night, then they face off against us on Friday, and then next week they take on Houston. So that's number 1 and number 2 in the nation for Kampe's squad. And he made kind of a bold prediction early season where he said that his team would win one of those 3 games, losing decently big against Michigan opening night, 121-78. That leaves two games left for Kampe. That leaves Purdue, the number 1 team in the nation, and Houston, the number 2 team in the nation, for his team to beat one of them and for him to live up to his word. Whether that happens, I don't know. That's a big task, especially with how hot both of these teams are playing right now. I think that Purdue is really on a good trajectory after winning on night 1. But let's talk about Oakland. We'll talk about Purdue, kind of the matchups that this Grizzlies team gives them. But let's talk about some of the pieces. And first, I want to talk about the Horizon preseason player of the year. And that guy is Tubaru Naivalurua. I apologize if I mispronounce that. He's a senior. I'll spell that name because I'm not the best with pronunciations. That is Naivalurua. Like I said, the Horizon League preseason player of the year. He's going to be a bit of a small forward, power forward type guy for the Grizzlies. He's 6'8" out of Sydney. 240 pounds this year, in his first game. He had 18 points and 5 rebounds. Didn't shoot the ball the most efficient in the world. He only shot the ball at 37%, but that's the guy to look out for. Long name, but very talented player. For Oakland, that's their go-to guy. When they need a bucket, that's the guy that they're going to. They're going to Mr. Tubaru, and they're going to get it done. Like I said, 6 for 16 from the field. Not his best night against Michigan, but of course, I mean, it is Michigan. That's a very athletic team. That's a team that's pretty good this year, quite frankly. Another guy that I want to hit on, another 6'8" guy, another forward. So he's going to be in that starting lineup alongside Tubaru. He is Isaac Garrett, 6'8", 219 pounds. Against Michigan, he had 20 points. He was Oakland's leading scorer in that game. What this guy gives you is an excellent three-point shooter. I think that he may be one of their best three-point shooters. He didn't miss a three against Michigan. So that's a guy where it's like you really have to guard the three-point line with him. He only shot the ball one time, but Oakland, they're not a bad three-point shooting team by any stretch of the imagination. When you think about Greg Kampe's teams, historically, they are very slow. They're going to play in the half court, and they're going to try to beat you, much like kind of where a Purdue team is this year, where they're not the fastest team in transition, but when you get them in the half court, they're going to be very, very good. Against Michigan, they shot the ball 26 times from outside the perimeter. They made it 11 times, shot 42% from three. In Michigan, they just shot it lights out. 19 of 35, 54% from three. So Oakland, they're going to shoot the ball fairly well, not as high of a volume as some other teams you're going to see, but they're not going to be the fastest team. Those three-point shots aren't going to come in transition. They're going to come in that half-court offense. So for Purdue, we talked about it against Evansville, but you have to shoot the ball at a higher clip, and I want to see more volume being shot than Oakland. Yes, Oakland, they're going to shoot the ball at a fairly efficient rate, probably more efficient than what you saw against Evansville, who really struggled. So you got to boost that volume. We saw that Fletcher Loyer really shot the ball well. If he can continue to shoot that ball at that rate and shoot it at a high volume, I don't know many teams, especially at the mid-major level, that are going to be able to compete with Purdue this year, but those shots have to go in. They went in against Evansville. Will that continue on Friday? Only time will tell. But you have to outshoot this Oakland team. That's not a matter of debate. You have to get those volume numbers up because they're going to shoot it consistently, not at the highest volume. Another thing you got to do for a team that's going to play pretty exclusively in the half court is rebound, rebound, rebound. We know that. We know Osterkloff, he stepped up, had double-digit rebounds against Evansville, but that has to continue. And for Daniel Jacobson, when you're on the floor by yourself, you have to rebound as well because you can't give Oakland any extra opportunities. Evansville had extra opportunities, and they weren't able to execute. Oakland is a better shooting basketball team than what Evansville is. They're going to capitalize those opportunities in the half-court offense that Kampe brings for the Grizzlies. You have to be able to rebound the ball at a higher clip, or else you're not going to find a lot of success. I think that Purdue matches up better against Oakland than they're going to match up against a very athletic team that's going to run up and down the floor. We saw that against Kentucky. Purdue, they didn't find a lot of success against that. So I don't think this is necessarily a mismatch for Purdue against Oakland, but you have to do the small things right against a team like this. You have to rebound. You have to shoot the ball consistently. You have to shoot the ball at a high volume. But overall, I'm not overly worried that Purdue is going to have success because, yes, this is it's a mid-major program. They're not too high in KenPom. I think they're in like the 200s. Oakland, they're not a great basketball team by any stretch of the imagination this year. They have a good head coach. He's been there forever. He's brought them to March Madness wins. So I'm not going to be critical of Greg Kampe, but Purdue is the number one team in the nation. I don't see Oakland going into Mackey and winning this game. I don't really see them competing. The line via our partners at FanDuel hasn't dropped yet, but I'm sure that Purdue will be quite close, if not covering the margin that is set in this game. I think that Purdue, they're going to have a very good opportunity. The last thing I want to hit on before we get to our predictions and kind of expectations for Purdue in this one is Oakland, they're going to run a zone. And that's what they've done primarily. That's about all that they've ever done under Greg Kampe is that zone. That's notorious with the Oakland Grizzlies defense. If you're Braden Smith, you have to be very strategic with how you break that zone. I'm not worried about Purdue being able to break it because those guys have practiced that all offseason long. But sometimes you do see certain offenses getting tricked up by that zone, not being able to pass into it, not being able to drive inside. And that makes you very one-dimensional. That makes your offense very one-dimensional. So I think it really goes to show for Braden Smith and then for Meyer coming off the bench. As the point guard of this team, you need to operate that offense and you need to crack the zone early. Get guys switching on and off. That's going to be the key to success. Once you get those guys, for Oakland, miscommunicating, not getting on the right guy, you're able to break that zone, then miscommunication happens. That defense starts to break and the zone starts to crack. That's when you start to find success, and that's when you start to go on big runs like what Purdue did against Evansville, that 33-5 run. I think that Purdue is going to find a lot of success against Oakland. I think that they certainly have the opportunities to do the right things. I think that they have the matchups pretty much going down the list. I think that Purdue has Oakland beat about everywhere, but they have to do the small things right. If they're able to do that, I think they have a good shot at beating the Grizzlies. But I'll go more in depth. I'll make my official prediction here to end the show. Stick with us. That's here next. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score to the next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game more exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. I love using FanDuel because I can bet however I want. We talked about it. Future bets, live bets. You can parlay it all together. Shoot, if you want to take Purdue to win the national championship, you can do that all with FanDuel. Most accessible, and that's why you need to get with them. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head over to FanDuel.com and sign up to play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. There are a couple things that I want to hit on before we end off today's show. I'll definitely get to my prediction, my expectations for Purdue against Oakland here to end off the show. But there were a couple things that transpired today that I felt like it would be fun to go over in today's episode. Number one, it got announced today that Purdue versus Tennessee, they're going to have a home and home going in 2026 and 2027. I believe Mackey is 26 and then Knoxville is 27. That could be flipped, but that's going to be an interesting one. That's going to be a fun game. Big Ten SEC matchup. We know the recent history, Carson Edwards going off against Tennessee. We know that Elite Eight matchup where Purdue, they pulled it out against the Volunteers to get to the Final Four. A lot of recent history with the Volunteers, a lot on the recruiting trail. I think it's going to be a fun one. I think that this is a fun matchup that gets to get brought. Obviously, we're so focused up on this year, but fun addition to the schedule. Definitely going to be one that's going to garner a lot of hype when that matchup does inevitably come through. So definitely excited about that one. Something else, this actually happened last night at the time of filming, but upon Matt Painter getting interviewed, the post-game interview, someone said, I believe, I can't tell you the exact reporter's name right now. Sorry about that. But along the lines of some people love Fletcher Loyer, some people hate Fletcher Loyer. And Matt Painter, he responded to that, said, well, if you want to replace Fletcher Loyer, you're stupid. You don't need to be hanging around those people. And I have to agree with Matt Painter on this one. Fletcher Loyer, he's looked great. You can speak all you want about Fletcher Loyer on defense, whether he's consistent or not, his defensive ability. But this guy is a leader on this team. He's the best shooter on this team. He's one of the best shooters in the nation. So from a Purdue fan perspective, I don't think that you should be doubting Fletcher Loyer this year. I think that this is a guy that he's going to have a lot of success. And I think Matt Painter said it better than anyone in terms of what you are if you doubt Fletcher Loyer. The last thing I wanted to talk about before I talk about Purdue, their expectations and my score prediction going into Oakland is Purdue, they opened up the year on KenPom third, and after a win against Evansville, their net ranking has pushed them up to number one in KenPom rankings. Purdue, the Boilermakers, they're number one nationally. They're number one in KenPom. Their defense got a bit of a bump up to 26 from 29. Their adjusted defensive rating is now 95.6, which, of course, that does put them about 26. Their offensive rating still number one by a bit of a wide margin. They're right above Houston. Kentucky is number three in terms of KenPom. So That's a nice little update. KenPom does get used by a lot of people. Those metrics are really huge in terms of deciding who's in, who's out around March time. But let's talk a little bit more before we end off the show today about Oakland, Purdue, because this one is tomorrow, and Purdue, they're looking to get out 2-0. That's what I want to talk about. I think that we just need to do the little things right. There's no doubt in my mind that Purdue is going to pull off a win against Oakland at home. I don't think that there's really a debate about that. I don't think that Purdue is going to have any concerns matching the intensity that Oakland is going to bring, because even against Michigan, Oakland, they didn't really come out with that same intensity. Michigan is wildly athletic. They're wildly fast. So definitely a mismatch there. Purdue, not as athletic as Michigan, but I think what Purdue does better is they're more efficient. Yes, Michigan shot the ball over 50% from the field, but what I think Purdue can do is I think that when they're hot, they can be really hot. We saw them go on a 33-5 run against Evansville. I think that not necessarily to that extent, but I think they can do a similar thing against Oakland, because when they're clicking in the half court, they start to run. And you can tell once those rebounds start to get going, that ball starts to get pushed with Braden Smith, and this team starts to click. So I think that there's a team where this is a team where nobody handles momentum. Nobody carries momentum better than the Purdue Boilermakers. And I think going into Mackey Arena for Oakland, that's going to be a big test, and I don't know if they're going to be able to live up to the expectations that Greg Kampe has set for this team, especially not in Mackey, especially not against as a Boilermakers team that is as hot, that is as good in momentum as this team is. So that's the expectation. Get out and get out fast against Oakland. Don't even give them an opportunity to get into this game. Take advantage of your shooters. Shoot the ball at a consistent level early and then bring that volume up throughout the course of the game. And there's no way that Oakland is going to be able to climb into this one. They already showed that defensively, they're struggling this year. They only brought back like 2 guys, one of those being the Horizon Player of the Year in the preseason. We talked about him, but a lot of new guys trying to adjust for this Oakland team. So you need to take advantage of that. Break that zone early and press the issue. For Purdue, we talked about it earlier, but doing those small things correctly. I think if you're able to do that, you can win by a pretty big margin, because a lot of the struggles against Evansville was just not rebounding the ball, giving them extra opportunities, just not doing the small things correct, not finishing at the rim. I think that Purdue, off 3 days of rest going in Friday, they're going to learn from some of the mistakes. They're going to watch film on Tuesday, and I think that they're going to play a much better, a much more clean game against Oakland. And I think that's what should be the expectation for Purdue in this one. Yes, you won against Evansville. Yes, you won by 31. And that's the expectation. Win big against Oakland, but win clean. Play going into Alabama, because that's your next test. That's a big test following Oakland. So you got to play clean basketball here in preparation for your trip to Tuscaloosa. I think that Purdue is able to do the small things correctly, don't get too ahead of themselves, carry on that momentum, and make their shots. They will have no troubles against Oakland. I think that they will put up a dominant performance against the Grizzlies in preparation for their trip to Tuscaloosa next weekend. With that being said, I think that the Boilermakers crack 100 for the first time this year. I think that the final score of this game is going to be 62 Oakland, Purdue 106. Purdue, they win huge with a 44-point victory over the Grizzlies. I think that they win big, and I think that the anticipation surrounding this Boilermakers team is going to be up to here as they travel to Tuscaloosa next weekend. We'll be covering Oakland tomorrow night. We'll be back tomorrow night here on Locked On Boilermakers, reacting to that one. So make sure you tune in right following that game. We'll have that one. Make sure you tune in all next week as Purdue travels to Alabama. That's going to be a fun week, an exciting week of Locked On Boilermakers. And if you guys are just now checking out the show, checking me out, make sure to subscribe, make sure to like, and make sure to leave your thoughts, comment down below, because it helps us out a ton as we want to continue bringing you free daily Boilermakers content every single day here on the Locked On Boilermakers, Locked On Podcast Network. And If you guys made Locked On Boilermakers your first listen today, of course, I really appreciate it. If you guys still want to watch some more, try making Locked On Big Ten your second listen today. Craig Sheeman breaks down the most exciting conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championships and every game in between. Find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, of course, where it's your team every day. Thank you, guys. Let's go, Boilers. Get that win. And as always, Boiler up, hammer down.